So we'll call the meeting to order. And oh, it's great to have Greg here. And we'll have Barbara Heffernan start with her spotlight. And Greg, you'll be number two.
Charles called me a couple of weeks ago and asked if I would do a spotlight on Cow Hollow. Let me give you a little bit of a history of my experience being on the board. I joined the board in 2019. I happened to go to a Cow Hollow meeting in the neighborhood, and that's where I met Lori and some of the other board members, and that's when I decided to join. And I hadn't really been actively involved in political stuff, although I had been very actively involved in some development projects in the block where I live on Green Street. So I was really well versed on how the Planning Commission was working at the time, and discretionary reviews and blah 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 blah. Anyway, so I've been on the board now for 6 years. I'm going to give you a quick presentation and chit chat about here's what I know. If we start to get buried in stuff about what's going on right now, I'm probably not the best person, but I'm sure there are a lot of people on the meeting who are. So here we go. The association was established in 1946. That sort of blew me out of the water. And of course, our mandate is to preserve and protect the character of our neighborhood. And Cow Hollow, as you know, is a very distinctive neighborhood. It's a small footprint, and I'll show you the map on the next slide. And we're mostly residents, homeowners and renters, but actually there are some small retailers in our neighborhood. For example, on the corner of Greenwich and Baker, there are several bars and dry cleaners and small gyms and so on. And actually one of our new board members is a small merchant in our neighborhood, and we were thrilled to have him join. Our current membership's about 225 active members, and it fluctuates, and it's always a challenge, I'm sure you all agree, of getting people to join organizations. Right now, we have 9 current board members, and we represent homeowners like myself. There's some renters and retail merchants. So what are we about? Here are our boundaries, and so you can see our boundaries extend from the Presidio at Line all the way across to Pierce Street. And we are only on the west side of Pierce Street. And if you look at the north part of this map, you'll notice that Greenwich is our border, and actually the north side of Greenwich Street. So we don't go right down to Lombard Street. And then on the south side, we include the north side of Pacific Avenue. So you can see we're not a huge area. And here's how we operate. We usually have monthly meetings, board meetings on Zoom, and every third meeting we try and meet in person. We just had our annual Cow Hollow meeting in May. I don't know if any of you were able to attend. Charles, I can't remember whether you were there. We had an extraordinary turnout. We had it at the St. Francis, and we've smartened up recently because to rent the St. Francis, their big room and so on, is very expensive, and we don't have a budget. We're all volunteers. So Claire, one of our board members, is able to get us funding through donations through some developers and small merchants. So so we're able to subsidize it. And the meeting was extraordinary because we actually had Mayor Lurie there, and we thought he'd pop in for 5 minutes, but when he got the lay of the land, he stayed. Stephen Sherrill, our new District 2 supervisor, was there. Lori presented at the beginning, a lot of Q&A, a lot of questions and answers, a lot of people trying to figure out what's going on with planning and what's happening with this upzoning and so on. We have a board member planning retreat in September, and that's where we talk about the last year and the year moving forward and what our priorities are. And we've started semi-annual member socials. They're very ad hoc. We had our first one late fall, and just down in a little place on Steiner Street. And we had so many people come from the neighborhood. It was just wonderful. So we're hoping to do that again. So our board has different committees. I'm on the zoning committee. They put me on zoning because they knew I'd had a lot of experience working on building projects and renovations on my block. Now, with all the new legislation coming through, one wonders, what about the Cow Hollow neighborhood design guidelines? We never codified them with the city, and the city has used neighborhood design guidelines that were originated or very similar to ours. So who knows? So we're still working on zoning issues. I get all the activity that is going on in our neighborhood and around about permits and so on. So Anne Bertrand and I are on that committee, and we communicate with the neighbors, but there's been a lot less in the past couple of years. Where one of our actions, and all of the board, not just the two of us, opposing the new zoning laws, because especially on Lombard Street, you know, where the heights would be up to 14 stories, and it's quite extraordinary. Nobody seems to have any sense about what 14 stories looks like. And I noticed at the information hearing yesterday, that was one of the points that was brought up, that the Planning Commission should be showing 3D models, not just flat pictures. We have other committees, and each board member takes on that responsibility. So we have safety, community relations with the fire department and the police department. We have Presidio updates on their initiatives. They're being very impacted, of course, by what's going on in Washington. We have community relations, and that's something that I do. So I'm our rep on the CSFN site. We have neighborhood preservation, traffic and parking and communications. We put out a monthly newsletter. So our challenges, it's for all of us. So this is not new news, the stuff that you're seeing here. But we do know that the state mandates don't really reflect what's going on in the city or any of the cities or the current population trends. It's sad to say, we all know this, the city has totally caved to Wagner and his deadlines and the RENA numbers, which are false. The Planning Commission keeps mentioning that they're communicating with their constituents, and they have had very few of those. In fact, it's really up to us in the different neighborhood associations to communicate what's going on so people have at least some sense. One thing that we're really concerned about is once this upzoning is passed, there's no going back. So we are really fighting this tooth and nail. Our city leaders are proposing, and we know this, bulldozing, demolition, that came out very strongly in the info hearing yesterday. The fact that the developers are going to be profiting from this, that there really is not going to be affordable housing, and that really housing, as far as Lurie and the Planning Commission and perhaps a lot of people on the Board of Supervisors, is housing is an asset now. It's not a dwelling, and the residents are disposable, where they are not communicating with us in a very honest fashion. One of the things that came out of the info hearing yesterday was rent controlled tenants. Small businesses are going to be impacted, and we're going to have high rises everywhere. One of the women spoke yesterday at the info hearing, and she lives in Jordan Park, and she was describing what's going on just at Stannion in her neighborhood and the concerns that they have. We're really getting active. I'm part of NUSF as well, but I'm speaking here from a Cow Hollow board member. We've met with Cheryl many, many times since he was appointed by Mayor Breed. We do know that he supports upzoning. We have tried to pin him down, and he dances. But the reality is we now have a district supervisor who is not paying attention to his constituents. We have talked with him about maintaining Lombard Street as a gateway into the city. And if you're going to do increased heights, then do it in a gradual fashion. They are not buying that. As far as they're concerned, we are going to have condominium towers on Lombard Street, probably starting at Broderick. We want them to remove density decontrol provisions. we try and meet with this District 2 supervisor and try and convince him that he needs to be paying attention. And in fact, it'll come up later in the slide. We're holding a town hall on June 24th, and I got it in here at the last bullet point at the Marina Theater on Chestnut from 6 to 7:30. And we've invited Golden Gate Association and the Marina Association and some of the associations that are around us to attend. And we're going to be talking about upzoning. Cheryl is supposed to be attending. We've invited him. We're not sure he's going to show up. We've invited some people from the Planning Commission. We have no idea whether they're going to show up or not. They're sort of dancing around. So that's where we are right now. I think one of the big things that's come up is SB 79. And as we've all agreed that as SB 79 passes, we are dead in the water. And there needs to be, I think even with CSFN, there needs to be a real push to write Sacramento. I know Susan Kirsch at Catalyst has been helping a lot of people with that, but we need to really lobby our membership and get them to start writing letters. So that's about it. I mean, I can answer some questions if you want to dig down deep into some of the upzoning that's going on. I can try and answer some of them, but I think we are all probably on the same page in terms of what's going on. You know, I think the future of neighborhood associations, we're being really challenged. I think my feeling personally is as residents, we're being totally ignored. Our input, our contribution is passé. As far as I'm feeling around the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, that developers are ruling, and that even though they're speaking affordable housing, it's not affordable housing that they're proposing. So that's it.
Dave, you have a question?
Oh, thank you. Barbara, so upzoning is supposed to be focused on areas with, heavy transit. How do they justify that for Lombard Street?
In terms of, well, I think what my sense is around transit corridors, I started to read all of that description of how they define different levels of transit corridors. And Dave, I was absolutely confused. Totally confused. I thought, I have no idea what they're talking about here. It was, I don't know if anyone else has had that experience, but I actually went in and started to read all of this, how they define transit corridors and the different levels and the buses and the trains and this and that. And as far as I'm concerned, it's gobbledygook. They have not put it in a language where people like all of us understand it. So it's hard to even know how to respond to it. I do know that if SB 79 passes, there's going to be development on every block in this city because we are all close to a transit corridor. Now, there may be varying degrees depending on this document that I just mentioned. I don't know if anyone else can shed any lights, but we do know Lombard Street is slated. It's going to be a row of condominium towers. And we're fighting that tooth and nail with Cheryl, and we will not stop. But he's on the upzoning thing, you know, he's bought the program, or as a friend said, he's drunk the Kool-Aid. So we're really struggling right now. We are really fighting tooth and nail, and our own district supervisor is not representing us.
Are there any other questions? Oh, Mary Eliza.
Yes, I mentioned earlier today, and I think what we're going to have to do is take a really close look at density decontrol.
Yep.
I know that Jean has some opinions about that. We could speak about this a little more during the land use committee report if you'd like to do it there, but we're hoping to get a lot more clarity on what that means. And we can also look at longer at doing more on SB 79 if people are interested in doing that, because a lot more can be done on that too.
Yeah.
And
if people haven't written letters, they certainly could.
Okay, and Jean, you have a question? Jean Barish?
Yeah, thank you. Barbara, I was a little surprised but I came in a little late, so I might have missed something.
Yeah.
I thought I heard you say that Clara was able to get money from various donors, including developers for this.
Yeah, and not developers so much. She went to real estate, small real estate people in the city and asked them if they would contribute. And they did.
Oh, so they weren't the kinds of developers.
Oh,
that-
no.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to clarify that.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it made it sound like, gee, they're buying us. No, we were
Yeah.
very, very careful about that. But I must say, it is a strategy that we should all consider using because we don't have the money. I mean, our little pot of money that Cow Hollow has is because of membership. And, we get no subsidies from anybody. That's it. So I'm sure we all have that challenge, and it's expensive to run these things. And in fact, our town hall this next week, each one of us is contributing to renting that space. We're not going out there and raising money. So that's basically what happens. So it's costing us $1,000 to rent the Marina Theater for 2 hours. And we are all Venmoing money to Claire. She's collecting. So that's what's happening.
Are there any other questions before our next speaker? Okay, I'm gonna ask everyone to mute themselves except Greg, of course. And Greg, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, and just a brief introduction. He's the
Sure.
controller for the city and county of San Francisco, and he began his career in the mayor's budget office from 2006 to 2011, working with both Mayor Gavin Newsom and Ed Lee. And he's had many other positions. And that's it for the introduction. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks. And thank you for having me. This came about because I guess it was a few weeks ago. I did a budget town hall in District 4, which happens to be my district. And Eileen was there and said, "Hey, why don't you come to this meeting and try to do something similar?" So I said I was happy to do that. So what I'm planning here is to just kind of go through a little bit about kind of where we are or go through the budget process and a little bit about the city's finances, and then also kind of some of the big picture outlook for what our financial forecast looks like and some of the big issues facing the city financially. I know some of you know the subject matter well. I'm seeing my friends from the Capital Planning Committee and elsewhere on the call. But I'll just start with this slide and pull it up, and then my goal is to make this useful. So I'm happy to just have a conversation as well. Now let's see if we've all switched over to Teams, so let me see if I can figure out how to do the Zoom. Here we go. All right, let me see. Okay. I don't want screen 3. Is that working? Is that sharing a presentation?
Not yet.
We just see you.
Okay.
That's a bummer. Okay.
Yeah, do you have a thing called, do you have the green button at the bottom that says share? And
I
it's
do.
white?
And you know what I think I did wrong? Here, I think I did. Let's try this. What about that?
That's perfect.
All right, I did it. Okay. Yeah, we're all the city has moved over to Teams, and I used to be good on Zoom, but now I'm, I fumble my way through it.
Greg, go up and click on slideshow at the top of your screen.
Great.
Slideshow, and then go over and say from beginning, and then click on from beginning on the left. Go click on that.
Showing it on my screen, but it's not showing it on yours. So I'm
Oh,
not.
we can see it. It's just more that we're seeing all your slides instead of the slideshow.
Yeah.
Go back
then-
up to the top left.
Yeah, and when I do that, it creates the slideshow on my monitor, but it's on the other monitor, so I don't think you can see it.
Okay.
I think this
Alright.
would probably be the best we can
Right.
do. So yeah, as mentioned, I've been in this job for about a year and a half, but with working in city finances for about 18. I think you probably have a good sense that the controller, just a little bit about my role, it's a position in the charter. My position is designated as the chief accounting officer and the auditor for the city. We also have the city services auditor function, which is a variety of audit, but also performance analytics and operational efficiency kind of consulting work that our department does, that the voters gave us responsibility for. That also includes the new Office of Inspector General, which I know there were some questions about, which we can talk about. So I'm appointed by the mayor and the board to serve a 10-year term. I'm about a year and a half into that. The purpose of that 10-year term is because this office is intended to be independent financial entity that is not subject to the kind of political push and pull of the other offices, and where I have the independence to say what I think, even if people don't like it, which happens. And our mission is to secure the city's financial integrity and promote efficient, effective, and accountable government. I'll just really quickly, this one's out of order, but so our role in the budget, just to kind of set background, I'm not the one who's making the policy decisions about what gets funded or what we do in the budget. But we are a key actor in the oversight of the budget process. We do revenue projections. We do annual reports throughout the year on the city's financial status to the mayor and the board. We produce a report where I give my commentary on the mayor's proposed budget, which we actually just issued. And then I consult with policymakers on financial issues. We do compliance with a lot of the legal requirements, such as voter-approved initiatives. But again, I'm not the one who actually makes the decisions about what we fund or who we fund at what level. I think you all also know we've got a kind of a rare thing where we're a city and a county, a little bit different than many others. You can see got a little bit of data at the bottom there. San Francisco is the 4th largest city, although when you combine the city and the county functions, we carry a lot more weight than most of the city governments. You typically have in cities, police, fire, street cleaning, water, library, etc. In the city government, county government has other functions, which are elections. The sheriff is the county law enforcement official. You have health and human services functions are normally at the county, in the county government, along with transportation. So we kind of have those both combined, along with some regional infrastructure that sits within the San Francisco city government, which is also a little unusual. We've got the regional water and some power in the PUC that's serving the Bay Area and beyond. We've got the regional airport, the regional level 1 trauma center. A majority of transit trips in the Bay Area pass through the Muni system. So we're even for our size, we carry a lot of regional functions that are disproportionate to the population of the city itself. When we're talking about the budget, and we're in the process of this right now, like literally tonight as we speak, but there are 2 ordinances that the board, mayor proposes and the board can pass or amend and pass. Those are the annual appropriation ordinance, that is the budget. And then there's a companion called the annual salary ordinance, which designates which positions departments have. We do 2-year budgeting. but it's a little different for different types of departments. There are certain departments that have a fixed 2-year budget, which means we do a budget and then we come back to it 2 years later. So those are the airport, the port, the Public Utilities Commission, Municipal Transportation Agency. And so right now those are in an off year, so we're not considering those in this budget. All other departments do what's called a rolling 2-year budget. So we budget 2 years at a time, but we revisit it every year. But there is a requirement that both of those years in the budget must be balanced. The state constitution and our city charter require that discipline. We balance our budget. We can borrow, but under certain conditions, but we have to pay the debt service. So we're not like the federal government where we can kind of infinitely, well, I guess we'll see how infinite it is, but infinitely borrow money to add to operating costs. So kind of snapshot of our budget. This is going to be painful to see. I think I lost some formatting here on this one. But this pie chart on the left, it shows of the entire city and county budget, which is 15.9 billion. A little more than half of that is, a little less than half of that is in the city's general fund. And that's what we're usually talking about when we're thinking about balancing the budget. That's where tax revenue comes in, and the mayor and the board have a lot of latitude about whether to spend that for police officers or street cleaning or parks or other services. The left half, the kind of yellowish here, which is about 57% of the budget, is non-general fund. So those are other special funds. And what that usually means, or what it always means, is that money in those parts of the budget are restricted, legally restricted for specific uses. So for example, when we pay our water and sewer rates, those go to the Public Utilities Commission, and they can only be used for the purposes of maintaining or improving or administering the water and the sewer system. We can't take those funds and redirect them to police services or otherwise. And there are a whole number of funds that are like that. Others are the airport, which has restrictions on the use of funds that it collects, the MTA, the port. And then we also have in that category special taxes. So for example, if the voters approve a tax and say, we're going to have a tax, but it's going to be dedicated to homeless services, like we did with Big Prop C about 6 years ago, that goes into a special fund that can only be used for that purpose. So a little less than half of our budget is in the city's general fund. And I'll show you a little bit of the difference between those two types. So this is the entire city budget. So this includes all funds, the general fund and other funds. You can see that on the left, I hope you can see on the left, this is sources of funds. So this is where funds come from for the city budget. That first category is charges for services. Those are things like our water rates and airport landing fees that are normally used for a specified purpose under state law. The second largest are property and business taxes. And then notably, you can see that 2 of the next 3 are state and federal revenues that support the city government. On the right is how we use funds. And you can see that the largest category, about 43%, is for personnel. So that's for city staff. That's for people who drive buses and work in the controller's office and at the airport. And then non-personnel operating costs, which is services that are contracted out to a non-city entity. Kind of then zeroing in a little bit on the general fund side. So this is that more flexible discretionary part of the budget, which is about 40 some percent of the total. You can see that the major sources are taxes. So these are general tax revenues that come into the city, and the mayor and the board make policy decisions about how to allocate those. through the annual budget process. A similar story on this side, which employee costs, salaries and benefits are the majority. And then contracts and grants are the largest expenditure categories. So even within this general fund bucket, which is this a slim minority of more flexible dollars, there are a lot of restrictions on how that can be used. So over the years, the voters, we see them on the ballot, propositions that restrict or require spending for certain uses of our general tax revenues. So voters have approved about over 20 of those over the years. We call them baselines and set-asides. There are a few examples of those here: children's baseline, funding for the MTA, et cetera. And of our $6.7 billion budget in the general fund, about $2 billion of that is carved out for those required uses. So that leaves, so here's our total budget, 16. The 57% here is in enterprise funds, and of the 6.9 remaining, about 4.5 of that is actually available to the mayor and the board to appropriate for what they choose. So the actual money that's theoretically kind of available for different uses is much lower than the total budget. And even within that, we have other costs like leases and debt service and things that we really don't have a choice over whether to spend on. So the budget process itself, it usually really does center on how the mayor and the board are going to spend that discretionary piece of revenue, that roughly $4 billion of the $16 billion city budget. There are multiple phases to the budget, and it tends to be almost a year-round process, and we're approaching the end of that process right now, this month. We start production of the budget in September, where we do forecasting and analysis. And then usually around December, the mayor's office starts its process where it asks departments to propose budgets. And then between March and June, the mayor's office receives those proposals from departments, evaluates them, makes decisions, negotiates with departments, and is required to submit a balanced budget to the Board of Supervisors for all departments by June 1st. Some go early, but everything has to be done by June 1st. So Mayor Lurie submitted a balanced budget a little over 2 weeks ago. And now we're in the phase where that's with the Board of Supervisors. So in this phase, the board receives the mayor's budget. The board can go through, it can move money around between uses where it's legally eligible to do so, but the board cannot increase the total size of the budget. They can simply move dollars within the budget for different uses. In that phase of the process, this is just an example, and this is an example from last year. The total amount of money that the board is moving around in that process last year was about $58.9 million over 2 years. So a lot of money, but in the grand scheme of the total budget, it's not really foundational changes that the board tends to be making. They're making adjustments to expenses and possibly restoring things that were cut in the mayor's phase, but really kind of making as a percentage of the total budget relatively minor adjustments. So right now we are in that process where the Board of Supervisors Budget and Finance Committee is holding hearings this month to review department by department the mayor's budget submission. The chair of that committee is Supervisor Connie Chan. Vice chair is Supervisor Matt Dorsey. And then Supervisors Walton, Mandelman, and Engardio are also on that budget committee. So they're going to go through their hearings this week and next. They'll look for savings within the mayor's budget and then reallocate those funds based on their policy priorities. So that's a little bit about where we are in the process. But I also wanted to just step back a little bit and sort of talk about where we are big picture and where the city's finances are going and what's happening underneath the hood a little bit. This chart is, this graph is from the city's 5-year financial plan. And this will change after the adoption of the new budget, but this is our annual projection of expenditures and revenues for the city's general fund. So the bottom line in blue is the projected annual growth in revenues. And the red line at the top is the projected annual growth in expenditures. And the problem, of course, is they don't match. Revenues are growing, but they're not growing at the same pace as expenses are growing. And that's what's causing this structural deficit that you often hear about, where we have a deficit in the current year, and absent corrective action, it continues to grow over time. And if you can see these numbers, we have a deficit of about 272 million in the first year of the budget cycle, and that grows over time as these lines diverge to over $1 billion in the out years. So what that really means is the mayor and the board are obligated by law to balance the first 2 years of the budget, and the mayor has made a proposal for how to do that, and the board's vetting it. But there's also a piece of this picture, which is we have to start consistently taking actions to bring these lines closer together. So that means reducing expenditures and or increasing revenues, and get those lines both closer, but so that they're growing at the same pace, so that we're not constantly scrambling to close budget deficits, large budget deficits in every year. I will say, I actually really do think that there's a lot to be positive about for San Francisco. We definitely have struggles, but just even within the last 6 months, I think we are starting to see some signs in our economic indicators that show that things are not fast enough, but slowly moving in the right direction. But that said, just to talk a little bit about why this blue line, the growth in revenues, is slow. I'm just going to go through a couple of data points. You'll recall from a slide I showed earlier that the biggest sources of revenue for the city's general fund are property taxes, business taxes, and then there are multiple other taxes, but state and federal revenues are some of the others. One of the big things, which I'm sure you've been reading about and hearing about, that's driving our financial picture is the slow pace of return to office downtown. So people working remotely. And that does a number of things, but number one, it means there are fewer people actually in downtown spending money, which affects all the businesses downtown. But even more significantly than that, it means that as vacancy occurs in those big office buildings, the value of those buildings is so high that it drives our property taxes and our transfer taxes. And so when there's less demand for that space, the value of those buildings is declining, and it's really affecting our economic and our city financial recovery. So on this chart, this is a percentage of office recovery in a number of cities. And so you're kind of seeing what the number is compared to the pre-pandemic level in each of these cities. So you can see that New York is about 17% below its pre-pandemic office attendance. And it's different for different cities, but San Francisco is low. We're still at about, I actually think we have updated numbers since I created this chart where that has improved. But you can see we're in the lower portion of cities for return to office. So that's affecting our property taxes, sales taxes, hotel taxes, everything that happens downtown. Similarly, and I'm not going to go through all the detail in this, I'll just give you the takeaway, but property values declined significantly during the pandemic. And that is, it's different for different types of property, but it's across the board. But you can see from the numbers here, the biggest change in value has been for hotels and office. And then lesser so, but still significant for retail and multifamily residential. But those property values declined for all the reasons we're all aware of, and they're not forecasted to fully recover for a number of years, although we are seeing, like I said, movement in the right direction. But that has the effect of also putting downward pressure on that one biggest source of city revenue, property taxes. And it has a secondary effect of we have property transfer tax revenue that's based on the sale value. So real estate is driving a lot of what's happening financially and economically in the city right now. This is a little look at hospitality. So hotels revenue per available room. So saying how much are hotels making per room that they have. On the left is 2018-19. So this is kind of the peak. And you can see this sharp drop during the pandemic when business travel and conventions slowed. And it's recovered somewhat, but not to post-pandemic. So that affects hotel taxes. It also affects all the support businesses in downtown and in our neighborhoods. That one I will skip. Couple of other big things that are kind of on my wake up at 3 a.m. List and worry. Obviously, the federal situation has a big effect for us, and that's in a couple of ways. One is the uncertainty in the general economy. So even before the last couple of months where we started to have action on tariffs and other things that have really affected markets and affected the bond market in particular, and some of the value of the dollar, we had a greater risk of recession. I think one of the things that we're watching very closely is how do these federal policy decisions trickle into the national economy, and we are not one for one with the national economy, but we move together. So some of the risks on overall kind of national economic picture are risks for San Francisco as well. The other big one is federal policy changes. So there have been a number of changes enacted, but even more proposed at the federal level, which have direct effects on San Francisco's revenue. So those include things like grants for public works projects that we do in all over the city. That funding is slowing down, all the way to Medicaid, where there are proposals out there. In San Francisco, since 2015, in 2014, 2015, for a lot of people who came to San Francisco General Hospital or Laguna Honda Hospital who couldn't pay for it, the city was eating that cost. With the expansion of Medicaid at that time, many people became eligible for Medicaid, allowing the city to bill the state and federal governments for that care. So we started getting reimbursed, which allowed the city to expand and improve that care and subsidize some of our other financial activities. If that is retracted and there are proposals to do that, those revenues are worth over $1 billion per year to the city from Medicaid programs. So that's another big worry for us. The state is less of a worry, but also a significant concern. They're struggling. Also, they're also a recipient of federal funds, and they're battling the effects of the Southern California fires, among other things. So that's another worry for us. And then at the same time, we have growth in the cost of living in San Francisco. And that's growth in the cost of doing things, but also growth in what it takes to recruit staff to work for the city government. So last slide, big picture takeaways. The effects of the pandemic are still really driving a lot of our economic and financial picture. So that's property taxes, business taxes, et cetera. We have depended for a number of years throughout the pandemic on some of these big federal stimulus programs to keep our city budget afloat, but those are ending. And now we're kind of facing the underlying change in economic reality. And we have a lot of cost pressures with federal and economic pressures with federal changes. So that is a negative picture, but I do want to just reiterate, there are a lot of positive signs in San Francisco that, 2 years ago, 1 year ago, even when you search for those positive signs in the economic indicators, you could search a long time and have trouble finding them. We really are starting to see them in terms of business activity, in terms of foot traffic, in our neighborhoods and in our downtown. Some of these other things that are happening, and I don't know about folks on the call, but I think there are definitely places in the city where I just anecdotally observe a change in what it's like to be around the city. So I don't want it to be all negative, but that's part of the deal when you're talking about the city deficit. So that's what I got. I'll leave it at that, and happy to talk about it or answer questions, or sorry if I put you to sleep.
Well, no, that was very interesting. Thank you very much. And I have some hands raised. Charles, you're first.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Again,
Okay, very good. Greg, this is related to the other people who are going to be asking questions. I just want to remind people, in case they came late, the protocol for Q&A is that the person asks you one question and one question only, no multiple questions, multiple answers, just to get on to the next question after their question is answered. And with that, I shall lower my hand. Thank you very much, sir.
thank you.
Mary Eliza, you're next.
Thank you. My basic concern is whether or not your office is going to have anything to do with the new position of Inspector General. And if that is the case, how far do you think the Inspector General might be able to go in investigating some of what we're hearing about corruption and problems in some of the departments with how they're operating their finances, particularly?
Yeah, thanks so much. And I think I received a question about that, and I had meant to talk about it. So thank you for the question and the reminder to talk about it. The Inspector General position will sit in my department. So I am responsible for that function. My office, amongst our other duties, has a number of pieces of the sort of public integrity work that happens in the city. We have the whistleblower program, which receives complaints and has been a source of some of the information that's led to these investigations. We have our audits team, which has conducted and is still conducting work looking into waste, fraud, abuse, et cetera, in different departments. The Inspector General, so voters approved it in November. That will definitely be a new piece in that kind of ecosystem of tools that my office, but also the city has to investigate corruption, waste, fraud, abuse, et cetera. The position has some new powers. It has subpoena and search warrant powers. But I think what it is going to give us is it's going to give us in some ways, our system has a lot of the tools that are best practices for local governments. But one thing is, a lot of those tools are set up to react. So for example, our whistleblower program, a complaint comes in, we investigate that complaint, and then we move on to the next complaint. I think what the Inspector General gives us an opportunity to do is to be a little bit more proactive. So when we're seeing issues of concern, or we're seeing themes that arise in complaints or whistleblower complaints or other sources, this position will have the ability and the charge to go out and be a little bit more proactive in investigating. I don't think it's a panacea. I think we will still have, there's still a lot of work to do. This is going to be, like I said, kind of one piece in our office, but also working with other actors, which we're always collaborating with: city attorney's office, district attorney, the ethics commission, Department of Human Resources, all of these entities, and that also includes federal authorities, all these entities that are part of, like I said, kind of an ecosystem of controls. So where we are with that is we're gonna, it's actually in the budget process right now to officially approve that position. And as soon as we have the approval for it, we'll start the recruitment. We've been spending a bunch of time, and we'll be issuing a public report where we've gone out to cities, counties, states, federal agencies that have inspector general functions, and done a bunch of research on how those are utilized, best practices, lessons learned that can inform us on how to structure our inspector general function. So we'll be publishing that soon, and then beginning the recruitment for the position as soon as we can this summer. So I do think it's an opportunity to have San Francisco kind of take that next step forward in our work on identifying and addressing and creating accountability for bad behavior.
Oh, and George, you have the next question.
Thank you, Deborah. Greg, very nice to talk to you. I always see you. That's a CPC.
Right, across the table, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. But you have a poker face. I never know what you're thinking. Mayor Lurie is closing the massive $782 million 2-year budget, but a lot of this is due to better than expected estimates for revenue in coming years. And your own slide 18 shows the opposite. And I know that it's up to you to be the one that's going to be factoring in the better than expected estimates. And I wanted to get a little more around that issue of how you're you're going to make the budget balanced, and how are you doing it? I guess because a lot of this is like magical. Unless there's a report to look at or something, it's just all of a sudden it's balanced. And
Yeah.
I'm a simple guy. I need a report or something. So
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you, George. I know it does sometimes seem magical, but I'll tell you the reports. There's the 5-year financial projection, which is generally issued in December and then updated in March, the end of March. And in some cases where you're seeing that improvement, it's the difference between those two reports. So literally we have a team here in my office that is watching every crumb of data that comes in on our revenues. So they're monitoring every property transaction. They're monitoring every payment from every business that comes in for business taxes. they're monitoring sales tax. And so when we see a change in trajectory, sometimes that allows us to bump our forecast up. Sometimes it goes the other way. And that has happened over the past year and a half, where we had a forecast for example, hotel tax, and that went the other way. It actually went down. So the forecast does move through the year. And you know, some of the picture is that like the blue line where you've got growth, it's just a small change in the slope of that line based on our analytics that results in a change in the revenue forecast. So I know it does sometimes feel like magic. It's definitely not magic. It's a lot of really smart, detailed people who are doing financial and economic analysis. But the reports to look at on that are, so there's the 5-year financial plan, and then we do a 6-month budget status report that covers the first half of the year, and a 9-month budget status report that covers the first 3 quarters of the year. And in each of those, we're also doing an update of expenditures and revenues across the general fund. We're taking all of that into account and using it to update the financial forecast. So if you are interested in digging into kind of seeing what's behind it, there is a lot in those reports. And then we do finally our revenue letter, which we just issued a couple of weeks ago, is kind of where we say we provide our observations about the mayor's proposed budget. I hope
Thank
that
you.
helps.
And Steve, you're next. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Steve. Steve, you're still muted.
I recognize that there was another category in your revenues for other revenues. And I'm not certain as to what that category really means, but I was wondering, I have a proposal for new revenue stream for the city. And I was wondering whether or not you'd be willing to entertain my proposal at some time. I live in the same district as you in the La Playa Village neighborhood.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I'd be happy to have your idea. So I think that you're referring here where we say other local taxes. So that's a number of things kind of piled together, but that includes things like sales tax, hotel tax, real property transfer. No, that's not what you're looking at.
The other category, other revenues, right here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. So that is a lot of little things. So that is like in the scheme of it, that 19 million that is out of 6.8 billion. And so there are a lot of little things that we're kind of compressing together. We could pull out what the list is, but what those tend to be is you may have a program that has a component of it that's generating revenue either from certain types of charges, or you may have an agreement with an outside party that's paying the city some amount as part of a transaction. So it's really kind of trying to pull together a lot of those small categories, each of which would be worth less than the 3.92 for fines and forfeitures at the bottom. So it's a lot of little kind of boutique revenues.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully this would be what I propose is going to be a substantial thing. I don't know. That's why I'd like to talk with you about it.
I'd be happy to hear your idea.
Thank you.
Okay, and Dave, you're next.
Thank you. Greg, just about the IG, just to clarify, he or she will report directly to you, and then is there any kind of public hearings about his or her work?
Yeah, so there will be so two things. So on the reporting, the charter says two things. The charter says it'll report to me, and it says it'll be part of the city services auditor function, which is not directly reporting to me. So we have a little contradiction there. But yes, the idea is that it'll report in the city services auditor, but it will have a direct line to me. So that the charter makes it clear that that's my responsibility. So I'll have a direct supervisory relationship. In terms of public reporting, there is a requirement that the Inspector General do regular reporting on the work that is happening. Personally, I also view a pretty substantial piece of this entity's work is there's investigations, but there's also creating a culture of kind of see something, say something, making people aware that there's somebody watching, making people aware that if they have a question or an issue, there's somewhere to go to it. Part of what that means for me is being out talking to people. So that's being out talking to city departments, community groups, interested parties. So I think the plan is definitely to have the opportunity for substantial public interaction. We also just did, over the past several months, we did a survey, which was to gather information, but also, I think for me, a way to start getting people engaged in the process of having this Inspector General. So yes, there will be public communication about the work plan and also engagement with the public for this position.
But no hearings.
Oh, I imagine that there would be hearings periodically, like at the board, and there would be about the work plan, and there would be hearings on the topics that the Inspector General investigates and reports on. But in terms of like a hearing format that's directly with the Inspector General's office, I had not contemplated that.
Thank you.
Okay, and I have a question. I attended a Connected San Francisco meeting this week, and they said that we had the most employees per thousand than any other city in the United States, including New York and Los Angeles. I believe we were 24 per thousand. New York was 20 and Los Angeles was a little less. I know there were protests today, but it's not realistic for us to balance our budget in the future without layoffs. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, so I'm not sure what the source of that data is, but it doesn't surprise me that we're on the high end, for sure. I've seen different types of data that do that comparison, and we're usually relatively high. I think there are two pieces of that. One is what I talked about at the beginning, which is we're a city government that has a number of regional we house the regional infrastructure. So that's, we've got the region's primary airport, we've got the transportation system, the water system. Oftentimes those would be carved out of your local government, maybe in a special district, maybe they'd be semi-privatized. So that's one factor, is that we do have, the other big one is our general hospital, which is our level 1 trauma center for the region. So we do have things that are kind of regional in nature, which pushes us up. But I think the other thing is we have made a lot of policy decisions to expand services. And that's a choice. It's a policy choice with financial implications, as you're pointing out. I think I made the point kind of going through the numbers. Our single biggest category of expenditure for the city is salaries and benefits. So that is the single largest financial driver. So it definitely is hard to think about if you have a significant structural deficit, how you would make progress on that without doing something that affects the number of positions. I think the other conversation that's kind of active right now is I think you may have seen kind of in the news, you know, one of the things that the mayor's office did in this budget was they said, we're gonna freeze hiring. And then as positions became vacant, they cut a large number of those positions. And so they were able to, there are layoffs proposed in the budget, but they also were able to make a significant impact on expenditures just by essentially reducing the number of employees through a hiring freeze and then eliminating those positions as they became vacant. So that could be part of the picture as well. But I think you're right that it is, as we continue to have a large structural deficit, it's hard to think of how personnel costs could not be a big part of that conversation. We might have lost Deborah.
Am I next?
One
I think
question.
Deborah's frozen. I think Deborah's frozen. I'll
Yeah,
go
we
next
lost her.
real quick. I actually,
Okay, point of order, Mary Eliza. It was announced at the beginning that there would be one question per person only.
well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to ask this question
Well, I'm
because,
sorry, but you're not running the meeting. Deborah is running the meeting.
well, I am the co-host, and right now I'm running the meeting. It says right there, I'm the host now. So I'm just going to extend that question slightly and say this. In terms of the employees, there's also the contractors, and the contractors are something we don't really have to continue with at the same level. We don't have that legal obligation, right, to the contractors that we, keep adding all the time. Certain departments are doing a lot of that. We're looking into that. But my real question was going to be about the enterprise departments. Will the will the IG be able to investigate and oversee to a certain extent the enterprise departments, finances and operations that have so far been sort of off limits to the Board of Supervisors and the rest of the city government, it seems, as I understand it. Thank you.
Yeah, that would definitely be in the Inspector General's scope. And I guess I would, I don't know if I'd necessarily kind of fully agree that those are off limits. My office does a significant amount of audit work and financial oversight of the enterprise departments, just like we do with general fund departments. So there may be some differences, but yes, I think those will be in scope. Those are part of the city, and they're in scope also for Inspector General and for all of our oversight.
Thank you very much. I don't know. I think Deborah's back. We're going to give her just a second to say a word if she's back.
Yes,
Otherwise, I don't see why we can't have George ask another question while we're waiting.
George, you next.
Thanks.
Once again, thank you, Deborah. Greg, I was curious, did the change of the way we developed the discretionary general fund budget from gross receipts tax to payroll taxes, did it lower the amount of money that's been taken in by the city? Because I have read that it lowered about $70 million less were taken in. So at this point, we're not taking in as much money due to Prop M. Would that be true or not?
Yeah. So two things. So when we did our first analysis of Prop M before it was on the ballot, Basically what our analysis said is that there would be less revenue in the first 2 years and more revenue thereafter. And so that had to do with a number of things in how Prop M was set up, but including the fact that part of the approach on Prop M was to provide a little bit of a runway for some of those businesses that had really short-term struggles. So there's relief for small businesses. The other thing that happened was there was a timing change in how taxes are paid under Prop M that contributed to that difference between before and after, but also a change in the rate that happens in the 3rd year of implementation. So the rate will go up a little bit as we kind of move into year 3 or so, which results in positive revenues. So all that said, that's a mix, but in reality, if we look at how actual business, and so that's comparing one system to another. If we look at how our business taxes have done overall since Prop M passed, they've actually done better than we thought they would. And so we've got positive business tax revenue. A lot of that is coming though from less from the difference between Prop M and pre-Prop M. A lot of that is coming from just incremental changes we're seeing in payments from businesses based on how the economy is doing and how the gross receipts calculation plays out for different types of businesses in San Francisco. So there, I think the short answer is there was a time where we forecast reduced revenue for the first 2 years of Prop M, but the actual results have been better than the forecast.
Thank you. That's great news.
Yeah.
Oh, and Dave, you're next.
Oh, thank you. Wanted to ask you about the job search. Is there a job description for the IG, minimum qualifications, and a selection panel? And will he have staff, he or she?
Yeah, so there'll be a job description with MQs, et cetera, that'll be posted as soon as we get approval for that position. And we've spent a good amount of time with, like I said earlier, we talked to other cities and counties. There's actually, I didn't know before this process, but there's an association of inspector generals that we engage to kind of get like get examples of postings. So we're using all that. So there will be a job description, there will be MQs, there will be a panel. Then the process has we'll go through that process of a panel. It'll be my job to make my responsibility to make a final selection. That selection then goes for confirmation by the mayor and the board of supervisors. So that'll be the process that happens. And then I can't remember, was there one other element to your question that
About staff.
Oh, staff, yeah. So right now we've got budgeted for the inspector general plus 2 net new staff. And then I think part of what we're trying to work through, and I don't have the exact answer, but we will soon. We will within the next couple of weeks. But as we're thinking about juggling around our budget, we have in our office, we have the whistleblower team and we have the public integrity team. And all of these forces are gonna have to be combined and aligned so that they're all working on the same page. And that may mean it is direct report staff of existing controller's office, public integrity functions, or a dotted line. But in essence, there'll be the direct staff, and then we'll revisit that staffing over time once we get things set up. And then there'll be the resources of the other institutions of the government to support that work.
And Olga, you're next.
And then I'll have to say, I will do this question and then I'm gonna try to get home before the kids conk out
Okay.
tonight.
So Olga, you have the last question and please unmute. Okay,
Okay, hi. Hi, Greg. Thank you for
Hi.
your presentation. It was very good. And I really like seeing this budget here. And I was wondering, where does technology fall? Is that non-personal operating costs
Oh, that's a good question.
or is it under capital and equipment? And do you outsource or a lot of the work, or are you updating computers? Are you going to be using AI? Those are my questions.
Yeah, that's a good one. And the answer is kind of yes to everything. We have the city's IT environment is a combination of city staff and contracted resources. So you would see in some of that in personnel. So there's the Department of Technologies. Most departments have their own information technology division to support their specific applications and infrastructure and work. But then also there's a good portion of it that's contracted out, which would mostly be in that non-personnel operating costs. So that's contracting for applications, consulting, software development services, et cetera. Infrastructure probably is a good chunk of it is in that capital equipment, although some of our infrastructure we now pay for as a service, right? We're buying cloud infrastructure versus buying machines ourselves. And on AI, that's been a hot topic. We definitely are moving in that direction. We've got a lively conversation going on about what are the appropriate uses of AI, what are the things that we need to safeguard in various cases for privacy, legal restrictions on data, data integrity, et cetera. And then also all the questions I think we all as a whole world are dealing with about AI and what it means for how we operate and when we use it and what's the role of AI versus a human counterpart that's managing the AI. So there is a lot of that conversation. I think, city government is probably behind others in the use of a lot of that technology, and that often tends to be the case in government. But I think there's definitely a big interest and a lot of opportunity for using new technology to really change the way government works. So thank you for that question. But top of mind.
and thank you so much for speaking with us tonight, Greg.
It's my pleasure. Nice speaking with you all. Thank you for all the good nuanced questions, making me think. All right. Take care. I hope to see you all soon.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay.